Welcome Wargamers, Doug here from 2 Plus Tough, and going into the next edition of Age of Sigmar, I wanted a case for my Flesh Eater Quartz befitting the Mortarch of Delusion himself. And as that thought was kind of simmering, a wonderful member of our community named Sam, who is the owner of Tabletop Stronghold, which is a fantastic MDF case company, reached out and asked if I wanted to promote one of his cases. You see, funny story time. That last time I did a custom case, I did one for my 30k army, my Sons of Horus, and I got this case from someone who reached out to me, said they were starting an online business on Amazon. Turns out that was actually a copycat. It wasn't until I went back to try and talk to them that I realized it was a dud email, and that the case that I made for my Sons of Horus is actually a design ripoff of Tabletop Strongholds. There are some notable differences, and I'll talk about those. But I saw this as an opportunity to, one, test the difference between a knockoff and its original design, a way to slightly apologize for accidentally taking something that wasn't his, but then also, of course, to get content for you guys and a new case for my army, so we're gonna knock it all out of the park. Now, the particular case that I worked on today started its life as a Mag Case 2.0, as linked to down below. This is the case I used directly from Tabletop Stronghold, is beautifully and wonderfully created. It is way more structurally stable than the knockoff one I did before. So getting started on our project, it begins with disassembly. I built up the case in its entirety to make sure there was no quality issues. It was seamless and perfect, I loved it. So I popped out the trays, unscrewed the plastic door on the front, along with those Velcro straps to keep it closed, and you're left with a giant wooden box. Oh, and I took the handle off the top as well. Now, for some reason, I forgot to film me gluing on a whole bunch of little extra bits and bobs I got from a local craft store. This is just like hinges and corner pieces you would see like on furniture. I grabbed a charm and a necklace, something like that. You then seal the entire box with Mod Podge, otherwise the primer that you put on this will leak through into the MDF. And then I gave it a good spray with a silver and black, the cheapest you could get at your local craft store. And in the end, you end up with something that looks a bit like this. Again, silver on the outside, black on the inside. There's a little bit of overspray, but we'll work on that. Next, I mixed up a few different kinds of silvers from craft paints, much darker to much brighter, and I just stippled the whole thing with a paper towel just to add some visual interest. This acted as a foundation, then I can begin adding rust. And I did this with a mix, like various layers, of the AK Studios line of light, medium, and heavy rust. So light rust was the lighter orange one that's kind of everywhere, and then as it gets progressively darker towards the center of the rust spot, you go to the medium and then finally the heavy rust. Now let's take a break from the box itself and work on some decor. You see, online I found a wonderful stained glass picture for kids to color in. And I wanted this on the side of my box. I wanted something that would take up a little bit of visual space on the side of the case, and I wanted something that kind of like reminded me of the Flesh Eater Quartz, right? If not what they are, then what they think they are. So I created this little cove out of some foam board and plasticard, and I slipped this picture into it. Now, while I was at that craft store in the beginning, I found this cool little stained glass section where essentially there's a really thick black paint filler that you get at the craft store, and it dries incredibly firm and it creates these separate panels. I do recommend practicing a bit before trying it because it took an immensely long time and there were a few mistakes, but overall I was pretty happy with it. Once that was dry, I painted up my stained glass windows with contrast paints because I wanted them to be a little bit washed out. If you've seen old stained glass windows, they're not perfectly opaque, like uniformly I should say. Back to our case, it's time to light this sucker up. I had a second set of the LEDs I used in my 30k box, and so I put them to work, which essentially just means boring a hole that I did before and then feeding in two red LED stripes, one towards the bottom and one towards the top. Always do a quick check to make sure they work before you seal stuff in. And the last of my little touches here was the handle. Base handle comes to you as a solid black hunk of metal, but I wanted to try something. I wrapped mine up in like leather straps, and I had some like fabric glue mixed up, and I was just taking a stab at things. I don't really recommend doing this. I didn't really care for the way it came out. I mean, it looks gnarled and nasty because that's the way the Flesh Eater Quartz are supposed to look, but it wasn't my fate. And then the fun part was putting it all together for for the last time. So we insert the handle, we reattach the front door panels. On the backside, I'll be powering this with an external battery that's for like recharging your phone. But to hide it, I went and got a fake rabbit pelt from that same craft store in the beginning. They're pretty dirt cheap actually, and I just draped the entire corner of it, holding it down with some fabric glue. But essentially it just drapes and covers up the hole, the LEDs, and the battery. And with that done, we are on to the final shots. Big thank you to Sam at Tabletop Stronghold. I have about 4,000 points from 3rd edition Age of Sigmar of my Flesh Eater quartz in here. And cases like these are just such a fun way to not only store your army, but display them. Again, that nice crystal clear, plexiglass thing on the front. And it's not only a great way to store your models when you're transporting them to a store or whatever, but also just display them. I keep both my cases within eyeshot right on my shelf in front of me, and they're just wonderful to look at. Tabletop Stronghold also makes terrain. Recently did an interview with Sam, and he's working on some D&D like accessories and stuff like that. So if you play role-playing games, go check those out as well. The most important thing to me, though, is just the thrill I get from encountering and working with other creators in our space. People who have a passion for wargaming, but express it in different ways. Like for me, this is YouTube. For him, it's just the joy of like the crafting and the designing and the cutting and all this kind of stuff of the seeing tables come to life. So I always try to get people to support small businesses like this. He's here in America. It's all a US-based company, and personally I cannot wait for the next edition to drop so I can start taking my case out everywhere I go. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed the conversion, and let me know your thoughts of what kind of cases you would like made in the comments down below. Happy wargaming, friends.